we can't control what turns us on, what we're attracted to, what drives those things. They just are. And there's no reason to feel shame and guilt on it. Now, acting on something that maybe causes someone else harm, yeah, that's a totally different thing.
I got into this sort of loop of almost using, I don't want to say using, but I guess using these women as escapism from the hard things I was going through in life.
But I was like, hey, if a girl wants to have great expectations and be completely let down, I'm the person.
It's easier to cheat. Like, and I think that's why a lot of people do it. It sucks. You know how much it sucks telling my partner this stuff? Like,
yeah. I've never, ever been able to achieve a single orgasm in my life without intentionally visualizing myself as being female, having a female body.
That's like, if we can summarize this episode in that way, I think that's exactly the thing that we want to convey to people, because that's what you said to me the other day, because I've been struggling with things in my own life right now, and just like, having that acceptance of who you are and recognizing you're not choosing it. Yeah. Like, it's not your fault, so owning it is the only way through, right?
150.19, a new world record.
Why don't you go on the website?
Okay, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Authenticity Podcast, where we are chasing authentic conversations on meaningful topics. I'm Alivia Walker.
I'm Janae Croc, and today we are going to be talking about struggles with intimacy and sexuality.
Yeah, so we wanted to do this episode because honestly, it's been something that both of us have really struggled with over the years. And we just recognize there's so much judgment from everyone, honestly, about this topic.
I think it's pretty universal.
And like, not even just other people, but like from ourselves about our own sexuality. So we really recognize that talking about things like this openly can make a huge difference for other people. So that was sort of the birthplace of this. And also just, we both have been going through things in our lives recently. And me specifically, I've kind of gone to Janae for advice, and she's helped me sort of realize that I just need to own my shit, right?
Yeah,
and
it's a big part of it.
Yeah, and you've done a lot of that over the years with yourself, right? And very publicly. So I think that that's something you're good at. So we wanted to just talk about this and be open, vulnerable, and...
Yeah, and I think the thing for me, too, that is when, after I came out about being trans, started opening up to everybody, I was shocked at the number of people that opened up to me with things that I never would have ever suspected. And often it was about their sexuality or desires or other things, related to that. And I just realized how so many people were harboring a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, and were very, very afraid to talk about it. But then me being open and vulnerable about all my stuff gave them someone where they felt a safe space where they felt they could talk about their own things. And I never would have guessed in a million years, some of these big macho tough guys that I was friends with that opened up to me about experiences they'd had with other guys, sometimes like in high school or with coworkers, and stuff that, I never would have imagined. So then it just really drove home the point that, wow, so many people are so afraid to talk about this stuff. And so that, I think that's a really important reason why we're doing this episode. And, because I think it's something that the vast majority of people struggle with. And I think the vast majority of people are afraid to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. So the first question I have for you is, what was the first time you felt aware that sexuality and intimacy wasn't as straightforward for you as it appeared to be for everyone else?
I just always struggled with intimacy and relationships right from the start. And it was very confusing for me at first, because even though I was aware of my trans feelings from a very young age, I didn't connect that to the struggles I was having with relationships.
What were the struggles?
So like especially initiating any type of intimacy. So I was, always more attracted to females. So, and I, was dating girls and was still very much in denial about being trans. And so I never made the connection that it just felt very uncomfortable and very unnatural for me to try to play in this male role in the relationship. So whenever it would come time to like first kiss in a relationship, especially in high school. And there was one girl, like, it was over a month of us dating constantly and seeing each other, quite often. And we hadn't even kissed, and it was because,
really?
Yeah, and I was like, honestly, this was a very common theme, because it was just initiating everything just filled me with anxiety, terrified me, and just something about it just felt really unnatural and wrong. Even though I was very attracted to the person and very much desired to do these things, but I felt like I needed them to initiate it. But I didn't realize that at the time. I'm like, what is wrong? Why am I so anxious? Why am I so nervous? And I just started telling myself, well, I guess I'm just shy. But the thing is, anyone who knows me, I'm like one of the least shy people you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
So it didn't make any sense. But I couldn't figure that out. I was like, why is there such a disconnect with this? And I remember and usually the more attracted I was to someone, the worse it was. And there was a girl, and this isn't like in the Marines, when I'm in my early 20s, and there was a girl I dated for a short period of time. And part of the reason why was because I was unable to initiate intimacy. And, I would drop her off at her dorm and go to kiss her goodnight. And my body would freeze up. And at first, I think she thought it was nice that I wasn't like being super aggressive, but then it didn't take long. And she finally said something one night and like totally confronted me about it. And I felt so embarrassed. And I remember going back to my car and being like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I do this? And she lost interest shortly after that and broke up with me. And it was just a struggle for me right from the start. And like I said, it took me a long time. It wasn't until I really started dealing with my trans feelings that all of a sudden all these light bulbs started going off. Oh, well, this is why I felt like, so awkward in these moments and stuff like that. But yeah, it was funny because like my personality and the way I move through the world in all the other areas was completely different than when it came to intimacy and sexuality. Like all of a sudden it was like I went from being very confident and secure in who I was to completely insecure and just lost. Like I just didn't know how to function. And really what it all boiled down to is I was being expected to play this male role that I just wasn't wired to do and felt very uncomfortable doing.
I could totally relate to that. And honestly, actually, it kind of makes me laugh. It sounds like a lot of lesbian dynamics where like everyone's just waiting for the person to make the first move. Yeah.
Well, right. Because in most, straight situations and hetero, situations, it's very clear that the guy's expected to initiate and,
right. And it's expected though. Do you think that that's common do you think most men feel comfortable with that?
I think so. I think for a lot of guys, it comes naturally, and not everyone.
Or do they, deal with that same like?
Some guys do. Right? I think some guys, anytime there's like a lack of confidence, or maybe it's a girl they're intimidated by, things like that. Like lots of different situations can cause. I'm sure and I've had friends say that too. Oh yeah, I had trouble with that too, but for different reasons.
Right.
And I think a lot of times it was not feeling confident or afraid of rejection or things like that.
But maybe once they did get into that place, once they'd broken that barrier, they felt comfortable still in that role potentially.
Yeah, for sure. And
whereas that you did not.
Right. And then, and I think also like a lot of it was, it wasn't about not being comfortable in the role. It was, other reasons related to it. And, I just totally forgot where I was going with that.
No, that's okay. Yeah, no, I totally understand that. And I think it's like, it is interesting when we like look at the typical dynamics of straight couples versus people that are queer, right? Like it's definitely
that's what I was gonna say. Because there's clear expectations in straight relationships with lesbian and gay relationships. Sometimes might be more clear who's going to initiate, but a lot of times it's like you don't know. Their roles aren't clearly defined, and and someone's like me, often I'm perceived to be confident and in some ways aggressive and have some masculine qualities of my personality, so people expect initiation, and that's something I'm very uncomfortable with. So yes, you just don't know. It's a very there's no rule set. So sometimes and if both people kind of feel comfortable in the same role, then that can be awkward too, right? If you have two people who prefer to initiate or two people who prefer the opposite.
Because I think, and like, it's not even that it's necessarily a preference, I think, with two women, but noticed based on socialization. There's like, I think when people are younger and coming out, there's a lot of confusion with how to make that move, because it's just, you're not socialized that way, right?
Well, right, and then sometimes there is somewhat of a negative stigma around women initiating, or
Well, with other women, like not always, but you do have to deal with a lot like more chances of rejection, right? Which doesn't always feel great.
Yeah, that's confusing. Well, that's like with the space I'm in now, it's more confusing too, because now I'm getting to a point where, because my presentation, changes so much, and even like often I look looking like I do now, which I would define this more as like queer.
Mm-hmm.
Like I get hit on by guys, sometimes I get flirted with by girls, and then I think it's not clear to other people. It's not clear to me sometimes. Are they flirting? Are they interested?
Right.
Or, I mean, sometimes it's very clear, but yeah, sometimes people walk up, start talking to me, and then I'm the vibe I'm getting, I'm not sure, are they interested in me or not? Are they just being friendly? And of course you don't want to, cross that line and have them be like, oh, what's going on here?
Right.
But yeah, definitely way more confusing when the roles aren't clearly defined.
Yeah.
So it was really never straightforward for me ever.
Okay.
And
so that first time was when you were younger, that you basically in high school is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Answer that question.
Well, yeah, I mean, because of that, I didn't start dating really late either. My first date, I was 17.
Oh, really?
I didn't even go on a date, and the girl is the one who asked me out.
Interesting.
She was a few years older. She had graduated already. And the funny thing, funny story, so I had met her. I worked at a canoe livery and campground in high school, and she had come there with a group of friends and that knew some of the other guys I worked with. And I remember seeing her and thinking, oh my God, she's one of the hottest girls I've ever seen. and plus she was like 3 or 4 years older than me. So I just, didn't think there was anything. Well, then she was a cashier at one of the local grocery stores. And I was there one time and I purposely got in her lane. Well, it turned out one of my buddies from high school was bagging her groceries, bagging for her. And so I went through the line and, I said hi to her and she remembered me or whatever. And then afterwards, apparently, she had asked my buddy if I had a girlfriend, and he kind of laughed because he knew I had never dated anyone.
Right.
And that was my junior year of high school. And he's like, no. He's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure they're still a virgin. And then I guess that really piqued her curiosity. So then she decided she wanted to be my first. And so then she tells my buddy, well, hey, talk to him, tell him I want to go out. And then so he tells me that. I thought he was screwing with me. I was like, there's no way that chick wants to go out with me.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I'm serious. She really does. And then I was so nervous about it. I talked him into double dating with me, and she got one of her friends to go out with my buddy. And I felt really bad because the other girl had no interest in my buddy. But we ended up double dating. And that was my first kiss. And honestly, to this day, one of the best kisses I've ever had.
Nice.
It was just, And the funny thing was, it's one of those things that I think was mutual. Because later I ended up dating one of her friends several years later, and her friend had mentioned that she had told her that I was an amazing kisser. But
did you end up getting with her? Did you sleep with her, or did you just?
She tried really, really hard, and I very much disappointed her.
Oh no!
I was so it was so obvious looking back. We'd gone on this date, typical dinner date, and then we came back and we went to her house. We sat in the driveway for a while, and she was trying to initiate things, and I'm like, looking away.
You were just nervous?
I was nervous and unsure. I was still questioning. I still oh my God, she's so hot. I don't think she really wants me. And then so then she said, and this was in the wintertime, she suggested, she's like, well, hey, let's go hop in my car and go for a drive. And I'm like, okay. And it's fairly late at night, and it's a Wednesday night or something too.
Right.
And so she drives out in the middle of nowhere, out to this secluded spot by the bay. And then the funny thing was, there was another car out there. And then she made the comment, I remember this registered. She's like, oh, there's never anybody out here. And I was like, thinking, oh, so you come out here a lot. And but then so we go to this other spot by the river. And it was a really nice spot. And it had just started lightly snowing. And it was actually quite romantic. And so we're sitting there, and I wanted to initiate things, but I was so terrified. And again, it just felt really awkward for me. But I remember the whole night she kept looking deep into my eyes, trying to make strong eye contact, kind of leaning towards me. But in my mind, I'm questioning, does she want to do anything? Doesn't she? And like I said, it just didn't feel natural for me to initiate things. If I probably would have just sat still and and looked, continued to look into her eyes, I think she would have. But I think after we were there for well over an hour, and I think she finally was like, this kid is not gonna give it up. So and then but then we went back to her house, and then we stood there in the driveway for a while, face to face, and then and kind of like started hinting at it and talking around it and being a little flirty and stuff. And then she finally she just I think she was finally like, I don't care, I'm just gonna do it. And she just kind of leaned forward, pulled me in, and then we started making out. And yeah, like I said, to this day, one of the best kisses I ever had. Like it was, I remember leaving and being like on cloud nine, just thinking,
I love that feeling.
Yeah, I'm 17 years old, my first kiss, but yeah, it was just something that was always really difficult for me. But yeah, that's funny because I definitely always remembered that one. So if she's out there listening, it was awesome.
Hit Janae up. Round two.
Yeah. All right. Well, so let's talk about your early experiences and stuff. How old were you when you first realized you were attracted to women, and was there anything specific that you felt triggered those feelings in you, or did something happen and all of a sudden you were like, oh my gosh, like I think I'm into girls?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So when I was growing up, I went on lots of dates and the typical elementary school, you're dating somebody and stuff. I always dated boys. And it wasn't until I was in grade 8 and I had a teacher that people started a rumor about her that she was gay. And I was like, and so this teacher I'd had somewhat of a background with. So during some difficult times in my life, she had been my teacher earlier in my life. And then again, she was my teacher in grade 8. And it's a very identifying story. So yeah, if she's listening to this, sorry. But I think it's something that it's, whatever.
So that was your first girl crush was?
Yeah. And it was kind of honestly, it was more than that too. I felt, so basically what happened was there was a rumor that she was gay, and I always looked up to her and admired her. And I was like, well, I can still be like her. I'm not gay. But then I started entertaining those feelings a bit more and was like, well, maybe she could feel this way about me. And then, and then I found out later on that she had a boyfriend, and I remember being crushed by it.
Oh.
So that was the first time that I ever felt something for a woman. But for a long time, I thought that was just her. And,
yeah, so you thought it was just that one person.
I thought it was a one-off, and I thought it was just she was special and all that stuff. And it felt that way for some time. But then later on when I was in high school, I met another girl who was a close friend of mine who is my own age. And that was the actual first time I had feelings for someone that was an appropriate age. So I started thinking okay, maybe I'm not, yeah.
So maybe I like girls.
Maybe I actually do like women, and it's not just a phase. So
well, because you probably had there was some social stigma still, right? And so you were, it wasn't you didn't see liking girls as being totally fine. So you were still under the impression oh, I should like boys. Were you worried about what your family would think or being judged for that?
And I think it was just too the teacher was it was just a one-off at the time, right? I always had crushes on boys, so I was confused. But it was a very different feeling. It was very intense. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was really confusing for me. But I didn't really worry about the stigma of that until I actually ended up dating a woman. But
interesting. It's funny, that just reminded me of something that happened with me with a college professor.
Oh, really?
That so I had one. This was in my pre-pharmacy school when I was doing all my pre-pharm work, and it was a biology class. And then looking back, she was just always really nice to me, and we kind of really hit it off. And I didn't think anything of it at the time. But then the funny thing is one of the girls that was in that class ended up being a study partner of mine in another class later on. And then she came out straight out, asked me if I was sleeping with that professor. Well, the thing was, is everybody, it was kind of well known that she was a lesbian. And this is long, long before I was out about anything. And so then I was like, she's a lesbian. She's like, she's like, everybody in that class thought you two were sleeping together. I was
really?
like, what? So, but then I thought back and I'm like, yeah, she was always really nice to me. She made it a point to me. She used to make comments about my body and stuff. I never picked up, but I wonder, that made me wonder, well, now looking back, was there something about like my feminine energy or something she felt drawn to without even knowing it?
Yeah.
And I just thought, we had a really good rapport with each other and, this and that. And she was always really nice to me. But yeah, it was so funny that, I had a study group with this other girl in the class, and then right away she's like, so hey, were you and so-and-so sleeping together? And I was just like, what? And I'm like, no. But yeah, so that was a funny thing. But
yeah, I wish. I wish that happened. I always had crushes on teachers and stuff. And you know what's funny? So I felt that way like a lot of my life too. It ended up being like a pattern that I fell into of like being attracted to these older women and having it be like sort of an unrequited dynamic and somewhat of like there was always like a boundary that I couldn't cross with it. So
I can see that be really hard. There's probably nothing, well, maybe not nothing, but one of the hardest things is, like falling for somebody and not being able to have that returned. And especially if it's just people that like, because of a situation are unavailable.
Yeah.
And
I think what I started saying earlier about the crush on my friend at the time, it was like, that was the first time I experienced that. And then what happened with her was she wasn't interested in women. She ended up getting a boyfriend, and then our friendship sort of fell apart. And I had such a strong reaction to that, like to her, spending more time with him as she would normally if you had a boyfriend, right? And not with me. And it just sort of destroyed our friendship. And then I think it's just hard growing up that way too, right? Because
because there's so, comparatively, there's so few people that are available, and then having, being attracted to people that aren't attracted to you. I mean, just because of who you are.
Yeah.
And
you get it reinforced that who you are is not right.
Yeah.
So.
And I can see where it'd be hard too. Like if someone's really friendly and really likes you and wants to be a friend, it's probably easy to misinterpret that. And,
totally.
Yeah.
And especially with women, right? Because they're so like
touchy-feely
close and they want to know about your feelings, and it's really easy to misinterpret.
Yeah.
I
can see that. I mean, I've seen that with gay men too. Like I've known a couple of gay guys who, probably because some experiences thought that a lot of straight guys were, in the closet or open to it, and they would, fall for straight guys, and then had a very hard time accepting that nothing was ever going to happen.
Right. And it's hard too when you're not like boxed into a certain sexuality, right? Because like for me, like I'm sort of open to people, right? So it's hard for me to understand when other people aren't, So, but actually that kind of reminds me of, I wanted to ask you a question of how would you actually define your sexuality?
Oh man, I know it's very difficult for me to define it, honestly. I like even as many categories as there are now, like, I'm talking about being pansexual, bisexual, gay, straight, and all these other ways to identify sexually. None of those definitions I feel really fit me. So what it is, I'll just kind of break down how I feel. I've always been powerfully attracted to women, especially athletic women. That's always kind of been my thing. Like I've always really liked female athletes and felt most attracted to them. And then there's been some like kind of girly girls and stuff too that I had crushes on. And I think part of that was even, not only was I attracted to them, I was envious of them.
Right.
So part of me, was kind of envious of, how things they were able to do and the way they lived their life, and, things that were off limits to me at the time. And, so it's kind of complicated, but so always been attracted to girls, especially athletic girls. Never really been attracted to men, and especially like what would be considered very masculine men, like very like beards and body hair and stuff. Honestly, I find quite gross. I find most men actually very gross. Like I sometimes I look at some of my guy buddies, I'm like, how does anyone sleep with you? Like, and but then I've had some experiences, and I've definitely, as I've gotten older, and I think as I've evolved, like with my transition and opening my, self to many other things and letting go of what I thought should and shouldn't be, and just allowing what is to actually, become, I've realized I'm also very attracted to androgynous people. Right. So people that kind of blur those lines, but that tend to, look androgynous, but have what I would describe as a very pretty aesthetic.
Right.
Yeah, and one of the first times I realized this when I first, after I first came out and started going to like gay clubs and stuff. I remember one night seeing this person, and they were just like tall and lanky, thin, and but very, very pretty, kind of like the model types, like that you see, like a lot of the androgynous type models that you see in ads and stuff. And I was like, wow, she's hot. And then I was like, wait a minute, I don't think she's a she. And then I realized, yeah, it was just, and I don't know if this person was, maybe early stages of being trans and coming out, or just kind of effeminate. But I'm pretty sure they were, born male, and we're still living that way, but just had very feminine facial features and like kind of very delicate. And but I just thought, wow, they were gorgeous, and I found them very attractive. And then so that was like kind of the first time I think that I realized that. And
what about, sorry to interrupt, what about genitalia? Does that matter to you?
Not a whole lot, to be honest. It really, that's one thing's kind of interesting too. I've realized through some of my experiences that even though I'm not, like I said, like big, hairy, sweaty guys and stuff, I don't have any interest at all. But I've actually found that kind of like penises, and I've had a couple of experiences and actually really enjoyed it. And but the funny thing is, even though I found out that I like penises, I typically don't like what they're attached to. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And like, I like vaginas too. But yeah, like genitalia is one of those things that honestly doesn't really matter.
Right.
Not matter a whole lot. But yeah, so that's interesting. Like, because people associate sexuality with genitalia, right? Like, oh, if you like someone who has a penis, well, that's liking a man.
Right.
And if you like vagina, that's liking a girl. But obviously, in the world we live in, it's a lot more complicated than that.
Right.
And just ask a lot of the girls I've dated. And genitalia is kind of really irrelevant. What about you? Because, so I know, you've, mostly been attracted to women, but for the listeners who don't know, and I think some people realize this, but we dated, quite a while ago. And then, so I think I was probably the first person as an adult, probably the only trans person you've dated, right?
Yeah. Someone that like identified as trans while I was dating them. Yeah. So I guess my sexuality would be similar to yours in a way. Like I would identify as pansexual if I had to pick a word. Just because for me, it's more about the connection and the actual person.
Yeah.
But I'm also more drawn to femininity typically. I haven't really dated any men. And when you and I were dating, like you were fluctuating more between a really strong masculine and a really strong feminine side. So, I'd consider that like my closest experience with dating somebody masculine. But I'm open in that way, I guess. Yeah. But
for me, it's definitely, the interesting thing too is that I definitely form strong romantic bonds with women, and I think emotionally I connect to them much better. And I've been in love a handful of times, and always with women, but I have had a couple experiences with men that them desiring me and making me feel a certain way turned me on in a way I had never felt before.
Right.
And then that's kind of like opened me up to the idea of, well, maybe I could date a guy.
Yeah.
But at least thus far, I've gone on dates and I've experimented, but I've never been in a relationship with a man. And so far, I've never felt that connection with a guy, the same type of romantic connection.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, and honestly, for me, I kind of just feel like we're all just like souls in meat suits a little bit, So I don't really have any preconceived ideas of like what somebody should be, but it's just typically what I've gone for. And to be clear, I am in a relationship that I'm happy in, so it's not like I'm looking for other people. But my partner now, she's a woman and she's feminine, and But I guess I would just define myself as open-minded if I had to pick a label.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of like. Yeah, a little bit bi, but definitely erring much more towards being drawn to femininity. So when people say sapphic,
Yeah. Well, I think, does that mean femininity or does that mean like lesbian? Because I feel like sapphic from my understanding means like woman loving woman kind of thing.
Maybe I took it to be more, I just thought it meant attracted to femininity.
Oh, maybe. I'm going to look that up. I'll put that in. I'll get a definition. I'll float it above our heads or something. So what I wanted to ask you about was, what was the experience like dating me back in the day versus the other women? Because I think I'm the only person you've dated that that's more like queer, right? Like that you've actually.
You were the first girl I dated who primarily dated women.
Yes, that's
and so that honestly, you know, one of the biggest thing right off the bat was I realized I had to up my game. That, dating straight girls was a very different experience, but like sexually, I felt I was pretty knew what I was doing, and most of the girls I'd been with seemed to echo that, and I just think honestly, compared to girls who have dated other girls, the bar is set really low, right? Like if you knew what a clitoris was and where to find it, they were pretty happy.
Poor man, I feel like they're getting roasted in this.
I mean, that was just my experience.
Yeah.
No, I think there's some men who just don't even that don't do that at all. That they just don't care enough or feel that it's in some cultures it's actually seen as weak and it's like discouraged.
That's brutal.
Yeah.
Do you think too because you were in the circle of like hyper masculine alpha male types that was more prevalent? Because I know so many men that are just like really attentive and caring, you know,
I think, and the thing is too, I think not only is it more prevalent, but also it's a stereotype that's kind of reinforced. Like there's it's like they're supposed to like, oh, I'm the guy, I don't care. And whether that's actually how they were behind closed doors, who knows? But that's the kind of image they would project. But I have met guys who are like, "Oh, I would never go down on a girl." That's like, and I'm just it was like
I'm like shocked.
They would say it was basically like a weak submissive thing, and and you were like a soft guy if you did that. And there's some cultures that believe that, which didn't make any sense to me at all. I'm like, pleasing a woman is like anti-manly. Like, how does that work? Like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
But that is a thing in some cultures. And honestly, that was one of the first things. Like, I thought I was, knew what I was doing. And then I realized, like, okay, there's a lot more to learn here.
That's hilarious.
So I just think the bar is, and it makes sense too. Like, you communicate with your partner and stuff, and I think true women probably typically do that a lot better, and you understand their bodies more,
right?
And but yeah, that was one of the things. But honestly, talking about sex specifically, that was the first thing I noticed. But just the dynamics of the relationship. Like, I remember when we first started dating, and if I was presenting more masculine, like I'm somebody who likes to hold hands and is very touchy-feely in public, and like PDA doesn't bother me. And I remember like going to hold your hand when we were first dating, and you being uncomfortable with it because you weren't used to doing that in public. And that was something that kind of caught me off guard. And do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, you know what? I think that was actually twofold for me because, so first of all, I think growing up with somewhat of like shame around being gay was like, I do find I get stuck in a little bit of that, like of like worrying about what people think of me in public. But also because when you're presenting masculine, it was like a weird thing for me to be seen as like, because like,
being seen as a straight couple.
Because so Janae looked before like you've lost probably like 100 pounds of muscle, not quite, but like
from my biggest,
from your biggest.
Close.
But you were probably still around like 250 back then, right?
There were times when you and I were dating. I was definitely in the 250 range, probably most of the time. Because my biggest, I was 280. I peaked at like 280.
For reference, you're 185 right now?
Yeah, 185, lightest I've been since I was a teenager.
So you were like 250 of solid muscle, presenting super masculine, and I just was not used to feeling like seen as like to the public some jock dude's girlfriend, and it was like a weird thing for my ego because like I think it was just an interesting thing to
get over here, girl.
Well, and I've been going because I remember that we were talking about because we were at the gym also, and it was like my gym where I went and like people kind of knew me, and like I think it was like a confusing in my head. I was like. Yeah, I don't know. It was an interesting experience for me. Like that was definitely something that I had to get used to.
Yeah, because when you met me, I was dialed up and when we first met, and I remember you saying that you thought I was presenting that way 100% of the time.
Yeah,
like
totally.
that
I didn't
I'd
know.
already fully transitioned.
Yeah, and not that mattered. It was just like it was an interesting thing because I'd never, as an adult, dated somebody that looked like a man going out, and then I was like, yeah, it was just a weird experience. Like I'd never had that experience, so it definitely brought a lot up for me.
Yeah, and for me, I was used to dating girls, so like it all just felt really natural.
As opposed to me, not a girl.
No, I'm saying
just
because
kidding, yeah.
because
Oh,
like
it
for
felt
me,
natural.
it
Okay,
felt the
yeah.
same. It didn't feel any different. So like, yeah, I wanted to hold your hand and hug you and stuff. And I never thought about like you weren't used to be, and like I said, yeah, I was this big muscular person, and I think typically you were the bigger, more muscular person in a relationship. You were the strong,
Yeah, although that
protector
I will
kinda,
say
right?
that kind of when I was younger, not as much.
Okay.
Like I did date some more masculine women when I was younger. That sort of evolved for me as I've been, aging, I guess. But
Yeah. So yeah, so for me initially it just felt, and the funny thing was I remember it sometimes too, then when we'd hang out and I would be presenting a lot more feminine, like it would change the dynamics, right? Like,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I remember there were times you getting very irritated with me, like.
Yeah, well, and I think I struggled a lot because how I define femininity felt like it was being questioned or like challenged, because I think for a lot of my life, like I went against like people that were really into like makeup and hair and you like using that as an expression of femininity, I thought was like, I don't know the right word. Like it felt like almost like it was really hard for me to feel that was what you felt brought femininity out,
Yeah. Well, I don't know that it was or is. It's that, but that's
just my impression.
That was the way of me expressing my own femininity.
For sure, right?
Like,
For sure.
And then, and that's really at that time, like prior to my facial surgeries and other stuff.
Yeah.
Like it was very difficult for me to present feminine and feel comfortable.
Yeah, which makes complete sense too, right? Like I think it was just an interesting thing, for both of us.
Yeah, it was a new situation, and
Yeah,
and like I said, for me, the funny thing was on the outside, it didn't appear to be much different, but then when we really got into it, it was. And,
yeah. So back to a little bit about what you were into like nowadays. Like I wanted to ask you if there's a difference between what you like in fantasy versus reality.
Oh, absolutely. And that was another interesting discovery for me. So I'm not like. So I've never been into porn, like when I grew up, like porn magazines and porn videos were a really big thing. I've never rented a porn video. I've never purchased a porn magazine. Yeah, I've perused them when they were, other people had them around. And like in the Marines, it was not uncommon for, a stack of magazines to be in the bathroom, actually.
Yeah.
But it was just not my thing. Like I never really felt drawn to it. I wasn't really into it. But at some point I realized I like erotica. I like reading stories. And it was funny because many years later I come to realize that's more typical of women. But yeah, I just liked reading erotic stories. And then, you read a lot of stuff and different websites and things like that. And I started stumbling across, some pretty unusual stuff, and then, or at least what I thought was unusual. And then sometimes I started reading stories, and it wasn't like something that I felt I was into at all, but the story would really turn me on. And then afterwards I'd be like, man, what does that say about me? That was kind of weird stuff.
Right.
But then I realized what it is. They're just certain themes and certain things like power dynamics and like for me feeling like sometimes I found that the idea in the stories, the idea of the person I related to being kind of helpless or, being more vulnerable was definitely a turn on for me. And so I realized like, okay, that's why some of these stories that are nothing I would ever actually want to do, but were still a very big turn on for me. So it's just, I think sexuality is very complicated, complex, and but yeah, and I think a lot of people, I think it's like I've had girlfriends share a lot of stuff with me, and people that like the fantasy stuff they're into is simply fantasy. It's nothing they'd ever want to actually experience. I had an experience recently with a girl that we didn't end up ever actually dating, but we were talking through a dating site, and she had a couple fantasies that she was very, very scared to like be open about. And I think something about me and some other things I had shared, and I think just coming across as like very non-judgmental and like, you know, kind of like and then she kind of like hinted at some things, and I'm like, look, you can tell me anything.
Yeah.
I'm not going to judge you for it, and I don't know what my reaction's going to be. It might not be something I'm into,
right?
But I'm not going to judge you for it.
Yeah.
And like, you know, trust me, I've had a lot of experiences, and then she, you know, she ended up sharing these things with me. She's like, I've never told anyone these things, anyone, and there were like 2 specific things that she was like really embarrassed about, and I was like, after she told me, I was like, okay.
Yeah,
like,
well, that probably felt so validating for her too.
Yeah, I think it did, because I think she just never felt safe to share that with anybody. And for me, I was just like, yeah, whatever. Like, and I felt like some of it was purely fantasy, nothing she wanted about. But I'm like, the thing is what I realized, we can't control what turns us on, what we're attracted to, what drives those things. They just are. And there's no reason to feel shame and guilt on it. And I mean, okay, now acting on something that maybe causes someone else harm, yeah, that's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
But you can't control, like for me, there were just so many things, like with me being trans and having this, yeah, you know, what I would kind of define as a complicated personality, where I have certain aspects of my personality that are very masculine, some that are very feminine. My sexual desires like fall mostly under like very feminine things. And there was so much I was embarrassed of. And like, I had so many relationships where I was like ashamed for not being the person they thought I was. And so I felt so much shame and guilt around that, and realized like, this isn't my fault. Like, this isn't anything like, and there's nothing wrong with the way I am. Yeah, I'm not like, you know, I'm I don't know, you could say unique or whatever, but yeah, I'm not very typical, but there's nothing wrong with that. And I didn't choose these things. And for years, I tried so hard to reject all of this and be like I thought people wanted me to be. And all that did was, you know, like make me feel horrible and cause a lot of depression, self-esteem issues. And so I really realized like, yeah, I don't pick these things. Nobody picks these things. You don't get to pick who you're attracted to and who you're not. And yeah, the fact, like, it took me a long time, even once I, you know, finally acknowledged to myself that I was trans, which took a really long time. But then it was a whole nother thing, acknowledging certain parts of my sexuality, like coming to the conclusion that, you know what, maybe I could date a guy. And so like, and then finally that was something I explored. And so far that's kind of been meh. And I don't see myself being in a serious relationship with a guy, but I don't 100% rule it out either if I met the right person.
Right.
But either way, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, who cares?
Yeah.
And if it was somebody that made me really happy and I make them really happy, that's a beautiful thing. And, you know, I don't think love is ever a bad thing in any way. And, so I just like letting go of all that shame, guilt, and judgment was huge for me. And I think I evolved so much as a person once I got to that place. Now I'm in a place where I don't care. If something turns me on, and I'm not going to feel bad about that. And like I said, it took me a long time to acknowledge, man, I like penises.
Right.
Oh, well, like, I didn't pick that. I didn't decide that that's
have
something.
the urge to be like, sucker.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's from. That's from some movie. I think it's Family Guy, actually.
Oh, is it? Yeah, probably. Yeah. It sounds like something that would be.
But I think that's honestly really, really great advice. Like, I think that's like, if we can summarize this episode in that way, I think that's exactly the thing that we want to convey to people, because that's what you said to me the other day, because I've been struggling with things in my own life right now. And just like, having that acceptance of who you are and recognizing you're not choosing it. Yeah. Like, it's not your fault. So owning it is the only way through, right? Yeah.
And like, at the end of the day, who cares? Yeah. So I like some goofy things, or what, some people might think are goofy. There's other people out there that think they're just as hot as I do.
Yeah.
And it's just, meeting the people that match up with you. But there's no reason to judge yourself. There's no reason to feel shame. There's no reason to feel like you're not worthy or be afraid. And another big thing I've realized is so many people are afraid to tell their partner what they really desire, to ask for the things they want. And because it's such a vulnerable thing, and I think they're so afraid of being judged or being rejected.
For sure.
And sometimes it's due to a prior experience. Maybe they brought it up with one partner, and that partner, humiliated them for it or something. And that's, it's a very, very sensitive spot.
Right. Or society just says it's not right.
Yeah, like any, like I said, like all these guys who, these super macho tough guys that admitted to me they'd had experiences with other men, but they were so terrified of anyone ever finding that out. And I think that's still super common. But yeah, or just like this girl that had a couple kinks that she just thought no one would ever understand, and she thought they were like horrific. And then when she told me, like, I really was expecting something much more extreme. And you know, they weren't your run of the mill things, but I was like, okay, yeah. And she was just like, really? You don't think that's weird or bad or anything? I'm like, no, not at all. Like, I think it's very normal to have like certain fantasies, and you know, there's, you know, a lot of people desire a lot of things or are turned on by things that they don't actually want to do. Yeah. And so like I said, it's just, you know, always having, I think the big things are always having a consenting partner and making sure both people are on the same page and communicating really well. But no one should feel shame or embarrassment about, you know, asking for things that, you know, that feel very good for them.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I know you wanted to talk a bit about porn. Did you want to go into your opinions on that?
I think it's important, because I think like porn is one of these things too that, you know, gets a lot of, I don't think it's inherently bad or good. I think like there's just, you know, all different obsession with it can definitely be a problem. A severe problem in cases. I think there are cases where it is a bad thing, and especially when that's replacing actual human interaction, or like I said, it becomes an addiction or obsessive. But I think, like, especially in culture right now, there's a lot of it where it's just seen as always this horrible thing. But I've also met couples who share that together, and it's really enriched their sex lives. Right. And I think it's a way sometimes for people to explore certain things they're curious about, and figure some things out for them. So I don't think you can just say all porn is bad, or, you know, things like that. I think it's a little more nuanced, and I think there are things that, you know, like I said, I've met couples where it's really improved their relationship. But again, like, it's about communication, it's about consent, and and I think, some people do, like, it does become a problem for some people for sure. But yeah, and I think it's another thing that I just know a lot of people that are into it, but aren't open about that they're into it. Or they would never, or they, you know, downplay it or hide a lot of it from their partner because of, they think their partner's not going to understand. And I think too, like, it's one of those, there's so, you know, it can be so complicated, right? Because when you have two partners that have very different sex drives, if one partner has a very strong sex drive and one doesn't, you know, how does the person with the strong sex drive meet those needs without, you know, going outside the relationship? You know, that's where kind of like, and then masturbation's another thing too. That's something that I think is very common in most people, but I know when I grew up, there was a lot of stigma around it. Like, you did not admit,
like, even for men?
Hugely for men.
Really?
It was seen where I grew up at, masturbating was seen as being gay.
What?
And you're touching a penis, even if it's yours, I guess.
What?
Yeah,
that's crazy.
There was, when I graduated, there was some friends of mine that went to college, and one of their roommates got caught masturbating. Somebody walked in on him in the bathroom. They made such a big deal about it, and this kid was so ashamed, he dropped out of that school and transferred schools. Had to leave the school because it was such a big deal.
Wow, it's changed so much. I think generationally, like, even hearing that, I'm like, that's crazy. Like, I think every single guy I know openly talks about it. I think with women, it's still sort of like,
could be still a little taboo, but
a little bit.
Like, I think it is much more normal than it used to be.
But yeah, like, no, tons. I think most people that I know talk openly about that.
I didn't realize, like, I thought I was the only person in the world doing it.
What?
It was something that, like, I discovered as a young child. I didn't even know what it was. I just knew it felt good.
Maybe the internet has improved that too, right? Probably.
Like, just people, like, you know, people are realizing that there's a lot of things that maybe they thought they were alone in and realized they're not alone. But when I went in the Marines, that was the first time I realized, like, and I actually thought I was being set up. It was like after boot camp, and I was in Marine Combat Training School, and we were on an off weekend, and there was a group of us, and one guy brought it up and asked me if I did. I was like, no, never. And never? And I was like, no, never have. And And, I'm like, oh, that's gay, whatever, blah, blah, like echoing what you'd been taught. And then he's like, bro, everybody does. And I was like, no. And he's like, everybody does. It's totally normal. Like, no big deal. And then he kept saying that. And I'm like looking around, like, is he setting me up, trying to get me a minute? Then he's going to turn it around and make fun of me for it. And then, but he was just like, no, like, seriously, like, everybody does.
That's crazy.
And then I was like, yeah. He's like, yeah, of course you do. He's like, we all do. And then that was when like, it became like people, then the Marines obviously was talked about pretty openly, but up until that point, like I said, where and when I grew up, that was something that had a lot of stigma around it and was, you did not admit to it. But in here, it's something everybody was doing.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder too if it's like, because I can't actually remember whether that was a conversation for me in high school. So maybe it's like, because around that 17, whatever age is like, maybe it wasn't as open, but I don't ever remember that being like a huge taboo as an adult anyway. It's definitely not. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. Porn can definitely be one of those things it's got some negative connotation sometimes. Like I do think like you said, if you're like obsessing over it and it like,
I think it can harm relationships sometimes if it's, like I said, especially if it's becoming a replacement for your partner or it's excessive to the point where it's making interacting with your partner difficult, which can happen.
Right. But I don't even necessarily mean with your partner, like almost your relationship with yourself. Like I would say like for me, like if you can be conscious of when you're using it, like, and be aware of why you're using it. Cause I think, once in a while, like that can just be fun and it can be harmless. But if you notice yourself using it like as a distraction or you're like feeling anxiety and you turn to that, like maybe that's something more to look at. Like I think it can really depend on the situation, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think I think with people with high sex drives, it's much more common. And I'm someone, the funny thing is even, like I said, like I didn't lose my virginity until I was 23, but I've always had a really high sex drive. So that was complicated too, because I had all this desire and no outlet for it. So I masturbated a lot.
But sorry, I don't mean masturbation. I mean like porn specifically, because so if you have a high sex drive, you shouldn't in theory need porn to get off, right? I think what it is for me, I'm thinking is like when it becomes something you need.
Yeah,
that's when it maybe becomes like anything,
for some
right?
people, it's much more like maybe certain things, or some people are much more visual, and that's like for me, I guess I'm not.
Right.
Like I said, I was never really. I don't know, porn just didn't interest me, but it was the stories, the erotica is what, like, I remember finding some old magazines outside a ballpark in a trash can one time, and they were like these old Penthouse forums would have these stories in them, and a couple of the stories, they weren't really trans themed, but kind of, and I remember being hugely turned on by that, and then that, like, thinking about that a lot later, like, oh my gosh, what does that mean? But yeah, I think it can be very harmful, in the wrong context or when it's obsessive or addictive.
Yeah. Once in a while, like, and I don't want to give anybody like a number that's normal, like, like whatever, but I think it's just like a self-analysis. I think you can kind of tell when it's something that's like a crutch or whatever, and it's taking,
or if it's affecting your relationship or just affecting you sexually, period.
Yeah. But in general, like villainizing it is maybe not like, because like you said,
I don't think it's that simple.
I think it can be used to discover what you like. Maybe it can be used within the context of your relationship to help you guys get through like a dry spell or something or whatever, right? So I think there's
or just to spice up things, like after I've known a couple couples that had been together for a long time, and it just they kind of like there was not a lot of excitement around it, and then they used that together, and it really improved their sex life. So like I said, I think it's a little more nuanced, and it's not inherently evil, but I think it is something to be a little cautious with, and that can get carried away.
Like don't judge yourself, but also be aware, be conscious about it. So is there something that you felt shame around that you've moved through and don't now, and how did you get to that place? You kind of spoke about that in the last bit, but maybe just how did you get there?
Like I said, there was a number of those. First of all, acknowledging that I was trans and how that related to my sexuality, and then acknowledging that maybe it's more complicated than just being attracted to women. It really all boiled back to, like I kind of mentioned earlier, just like realizing there's no reason for me to be ashamed of how I feel. Because we assign so many other qualities and characteristics to our sexuality. Like, this is what a macho guy does. This is, because what do movies teach us? What does pop culture teach us?
Right.
That guys always, like any, manly man behaves a certain way with a woman, and the reality is that's not true at all. And actually, studies have shown that it's very, because every movie, the hero, right? Like he, carries the woman off her feet and does, plays this, typically very masculine role. And, the girl is seen as being more submissive and passive. And so those stereotypes are all reinforced, when the reality is a lot of studies have shown that really powerful men often have very submissive desires in the bedroom. Like letting go of that power or reversing the power dynamic, they actually find to be a big turn on. That's a very common thing. Mm-hmm. I just think, like I said, humans as individuals are extremely complex, and sexuality is just another way that we are. Yeah. And like I said, you don't get to pick what turns you on, what you're attracted to. You don't decide those things. They just are. And so there's no reason to feel guilt and shame or feel bad about that.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important, especially in a relationship, to have a safe space to be able to talk about those things. And I know like most people are afraid to and feel judged. And I've definitely felt that. And I've been in relationships and I knew, that I was expected to be a certain way. And if I deviated from that at all and I was honest, it happened to me. Like I was open about some of my desires early on and then shame for it later.
Right.
And, and then in relationships and just being asked things like, well, why can't you just do this? Or why can't you do that? And that made me feel horrible because I wasn't capable of it, because my brain's not wired that way. And for me to do those things not only made me very uncomfortable, I was simply incapable of it. Like it just doesn't, I don't work that way.
Right.
And so that was like the big part of it and that happened over a period of many years. It wasn't like one day I went from feeling super ashamed, next day, hey, everything's cool. It was a process.
Yeah.
But now I'm to the point, like I'm totally comfortable admitting everything. And awesome. This is who I am. This is how I feel. And if that doesn't work for you, totally cool. But I'm not going to feel bad about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I know this could be a kind of a hard question to answer too, but is there anything that makes you feel like really vulnerable? And conversely, anything like, when do you feel the most secure in a relationship? Like, if I don't know if it's a certain situation or something else, but are there things that like really like, oh my gosh, this makes me feel really vulnerable, or something a partner does or can do that like, hey, now I feel really, really good about myself. And
yeah, that's a tough question for sure. Vulnerable would definitely be. So I think because I grew up feeling like I was a bit less than for women, I grew up thinking like they wanted a man. What do I have to do to become that version of whatever they want so that they'll love me? I sort of internalized this feeling of needing to please them all the time, needing to take on the typical masculine roles. So like, be leading in the bedroom, like, I guess, are you specifically talking about in the bedroom, or do you just mean like within the relationship?
I think I was kind of thinking of that when I wrote that question, but it could be in the relationship too.
Yeah, I think I feel vulnerable when I'm it's like, have you ever heard people talk about, I think it was Chris Bumstead say it on a podcast, or it was maybe the interviewer of him saying it, that men have to earn their right to be vulnerable by doing other man card type things. Like I've felt that way. So like
you had to do a bunch of things in order to be able to feel okay being vulnerable.
Yeah, like you had or to be in that other role. Like if I felt like there wasn't something, or if I feel, I should say, it's a current thing. Like if I don't feel like I'm stronger than them, or have something about myself that like makes me, I don't know what the right
almost
word
like
is.
You built up enough points in this area, so I can.
That's exactly the way that they phrased it. That podcast
really?
was points, I think, and it's like, do I have enough man points to make it okay that I'm vulnerable and so like
that's horrible.
It is totally, but I think I'm surprised that you don't relate to that from growing up.
No, I mean, the thing is put me in competition or things like that, and I had all the points.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Put me in the bedroom, and now I got 0.
But so if you didn't have any of those, I guess you just didn't feel that way anyway, right?
Well, here's for me that made it worse, because the dynamic I experienced was, okay, they have all these expectations of me that I can't fulfill. So I used to I had a running joke in my friend circle and I used to say this all the time, joking, and I don't know anyone probably didn't know how much truth there was in it. But I was like, hey, if a girl wants to have great expectations, be completely let down, I'm the person, you know. And I used to say that, and even to girls and stuff, jokingly. Well, joking, not joking.
Yeah.
And but yeah, for me, I guess I never saw it that way, because I saw it as, I've been put up on this pedestal, especially when I was at like the peak of my powerlifting career. I'm a world champion athlete. I was a successful Marine. I guarded the president. I did all these things that were seen as this uber masculine.
Yeah.
And then they're expecting that same person in the bedroom.
Right.
And I was nothing like that. And so I was like, sometimes I would purposely avoid it. There were a couple girls that like at that time in my life, after my second divorce, that, like, girls I'd run into at fitness shows and stuff, and they'd be like fitness models, and I was very attracted to them, and they were very attracted to me. But a lot of it was because of my status at the time, right? Like, I'm this world champion athlete, this massive muscular person, but I knew what they saw in me and what they were expecting. And I knew in my head, if I actually am intimate with them, it's not going to be what they want, and it's going to be hugely disappointing, and it's going to be crushing for me.
Right.
So I'm just going to let them think I'm that person, and let them
not ever
leave
go
this.
for it.
Yeah, no, because I'm just going to disappoint them. They're going to be hugely disappointed.
Yeah.
And it'll be crushing for me. So I'm not even going to cross that bridge. And who knows, maybe some of those girls wouldn't have been that way, but I definitely was under the impression, and I'm pretty certain, because they were drawn to that persona, and they were expecting that. Like, yeah, some girlfriends I made later on after coming out, I was shocked to hear that she's like, oh yeah, we all used to talk about you and stuff. And I'm like, really? Well, I never heard any of this, number one, but number two, but then I immediately thought, well, probably a good thing I didn't know, because I just would have disappointed you. There was a girl specifically, and that, wanted to be intimate with me, and that was a big part of the reason I wasn't. Also, I felt like she was in a vulnerable place in her life, and I did not want to take advantage of that situation. I thought that'd be a really shitty thing to do. And, but also part of it was too, like, I'm not the person you think I am, and I'm going to disappoint you.
Right.
And, so that was like, for me, it was exactly the opposite. The more man points I built up, I felt like the farther I had to fall, and the bigger the disappointment was going to be.
Well, I get that too, actually, in a way. I think I mentioned this in the identity episode a bit, but feeling like you have all these good qualities, and then they still don't want you, like, that's definitely a hard thing to deal with. But like, in terms of people I'm actually in a relationship, I still feel that vulnerability of like, when I'm in a position where I'm like receiving more than them, or like, even just like with day-to-day tasks, like if they were like paying for more things than me, like I have that in my head a bit. Like, it definitely feels, and I think that comes back down to like, not feeling worth enough.
Yeah.
And feeling like those masculine things are what make me valuable, right? So it's an interesting thing to grow up feeling like you're like with an idea of what makes you valuable in your head, and it's something I'm trying to unlearn for sure.
Yeah.
And I would say, just to finish that answer, like what you said, the other part of it was,
what also causes you, like,
what makes you feel good,
the most secure.
So the thing that makes me feel the most secure is when we're equal, because that's what I want. Truly, what I want is equality in the relationship in all the roles. So that makes me feel secure, and also what makes me feel the most secure is when someone can receive hard truths from me and still care and show up and still want to be with me, because I have a lot of those, right? Like you, I have my own complications, and like
everybody does.
Like I've at different points in my life, sort of explored polyamory a bit, and I know, like, I'm in a monogamous relationship now, but like, there's parts of those feelings that still come up, and that's like some of the stuff I've been talking to you about that you've helped me be okay with, or at least start to be okay with, and look at it from like a different perspective. But I think like being able to share some of those things and like feeling accepted for that has been really helpful.
Yeah.
It makes me feel secure.
Yeah. Yeah. I can relate. For me, what makes me feel really vulnerable, is being expected to play a role that I'm not comfortable with. It doesn't come natural to me. And because like I said, like, there's just this huge feeling of disappointing them, and then that's going to make me feel terrible. And that's happened many times, right? Like, and I've never had like in the moment where, the thing was, ironically, like, I went through, like, so I was a virgin until I was 23. The first person I ever slept with was my first wife. And then I had only been with her for 11 and a half years until that relationship ended. And then I kind of made up for lost time in between that. And then my second marriage, like several years later, and, had experience with a lot of different girls, and I was still faking it the whole time, though. I was still playing this role, still pretending, and don't get me wrong, like, I was attracted to these girls and I wanted to be with these girls, but I was playing a role that was completely unnatural to me. And I eventually got to a point where now at this point I refuse to do it. Like, I don't want to do it anymore. And to explain to people like how strong this is for me and how deep this runs, I haven't been in a relationship actually since you and I broke up, and that was 5 years ago. And I've dated a little bit, but the people I have been with in that time, I haven't let anyone touch my genitals, because it's so difficult for me. It brings up like bad feelings, and it just feels really unnatural. And I think like, once I have that, that's like the last surgery I want.
Do you think that will greatly affect your sexuality?
Hugely, because that's something that just being expected. And don't get me wrong, like, I've had a lot of sexual experiences that were very good and very gratifying, and I felt a connection to the person I was with. I did love that, like, there was a closeness and a bonding, having sex with someone you really care about, that was very important for me and very fulfilling, and allowed me to connect to that person in a way I don't know I could have otherwise. But it was still always unnatural. I was always playing a role. I was always like, I had to visualize really intensely just to get through it. And
that's been always for you, right?
Always,
the visualization, yeah.
Always. I've never, ever been able to achieve a single orgasm in my life without intentionally visualizing myself as being female, having a female body.
Yeah, I find that so interesting.
So, yeah, I've never, that's from day one, as young as I can remember. And that's always been a thing. So yeah, but it's got to the point where I've faked it so many, and I shouldn't say fake it, because it's not that simple. Like, I would be attracted to the person I was with. I would feel a connection with them, but sexually, the only way I could function was to be visualizing. Yeah. And, but it got to be such a burden, and, that, I won't even let anybody touch me now. It's just, it's so, causes so much dysphoria, and it's so like, just makes me feel like not me.
So are you are going to get a bottom surgery, right?
I want to. The only reason I haven't is because it's a complicated surgery. There are risks. I mean, the vast majority of them are very successful, but I do worry. I worry about, what if there are complications? Someone could be potentially serious, even life-threatening.
For sure. Yeah. It's
and revisions are common. Often, after the first surgery, you'll need to go back for revisions. I was hoping that the science behind it and procedures would advance more. And don't get me wrong, there's lots of girls out there that have had the surgery and are very happy with it. Everything looks and works great. And, but there are risks, and, but yeah, it's definitely like, if I could snap my fingers and just swap one for the other, that would have been done many, many years ago. There's never been any doubt that that's what I want and would feel more natural with. It's just, it's not that simple in real life. And plus, it's super expensive. If your insurance doesn't cover it, you're talking tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes more. And then just, for 30 years, I've been researching all the best surgeons everywhere. Like, who do I want to go to? Who is the absolute best? And then there's a long waiting list. There's like, a bunch of hoops you have to jump through. You have to have multiple letters from multiple therapists to even get approved. And
interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot. Like, people don't realize. They think it's like, oh yeah, you can just go, like for most procedures, if you want breast augmentation, you could just, you schedule an appointment, get a consult, and boom, schedule it. Not that simple for gender reassignment or gender confirmation. But yeah, so there's a number of reasons why I haven't done it, but none of them are because it isn't something I'm certain that I want. Right.
But you think that will give you a freedom in the bedroom that you haven't known?
No, for the first time in my life, I'll just relax and enjoy it and not have to do those things. Right. And of course, it's more complex than just the parts I have, but that's a big part of it. Like, it's, like I said, it's not that I haven't been able to do those things. But after years and years and years, it just got more and more difficult. And then too, like things build into that. Like I said, it's sometimes being shamed, not even like having necessarily your partner say something directly, but in their reactions, and you can tell what they're thinking, and but just getting to the point where it just becomes such a burden that it's just not even worth it. And it's just like, yeah, no, I'm sorry. Like, I can't do that anymore. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's kind of another reason I've dated very little recently. And maybe, maybe with the right partner and someone I feel very safe and secure with, that would be okay. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely, very, very difficult for me, extremely difficult. So yeah, it's just kind of like, it's not worth the stress that it causes.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah. And, tough stuff. Mm-hmm. And, but again, I'm not going to judge myself for that. It's not my fault that I feel that way.
Yeah. It's still hard when you feel like you can't connect, even though you'd like to connect, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I miss intimacy as well. Like I said, I have a naturally strong sex drive too, which further complicates things. Mm-hmm. But in that, like being on only estrogen and stuff and having androgen in my body, it has tempered that somewhat for sure. Yeah. But that's the reality of me being me. It's part of the package. Right. And like I said, I think bottom surgery will help a lot with that. And then too, like I said, just being with the right partner where I feel safe and secure and I can, do what comes naturally to me and not feel judged for that.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. Non-judgment's really important.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think too, and I think sometimes people are quick to judge because of their own insecurities, right? They're afraid of being judged, or they take it as like if everything isn't going perfect for you, they see it as a rejection of them.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And I know people that's happened to too, like where their partner's gotten really, really upset, assuming that it was something with them when it had nothing to do with them.
Mm-hmm. And, I always find that like when I hear certain people talk about like taking it personally when like a guy can't get hard.
Yeah, 9 times out of 10 that has nothing to do, especially like I can't tell you how many times straight friends like, so like the girl's really hurt thinking that the guy wasn't able to achieve an erection because they're not attracted to them. And often it's the opposite. They're so attracted to them that they're afraid to disappoint them. Totally. And then that anxiety, it's a bad feedback loop. And then they're unable. Yeah. Girl feels rejected. Guy feels ashamed. Mm-hmm. And really it's because there's so much they're so attracted to him and so afraid of letting her down, or even other reasons. But often it is related in some way to disappointing her. Mm-hmm. That fear is what causes that 100%. Inability.
Yeah, and it becomes a loop. I've experienced that myself, like as a woman, where like I was experiencing for a while with my partner like this like response of like wanting to stop, and I don't know what that's from. Whether that's childhood stuff, whether that's just I don't know, whatever that was. But it for a bit really created because of course it made her feel really bad. Yeah. And created like this, like now it's like an anxiety for me because I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to make her feel bad. So then it creates a bit of a loop, right? So I definitely can understand how guys that can't get hard because that's even more visual. Sometimes if you can't get past that.
And then the girl assuming it has something to do with them. Which
right. Totally.
I would say
it doesn't.
99% of the time it doesn't.
Right.
And then, it's funny because that just reminded me of something I experienced once too. Like, so for me, I was never someone who could finish quickly. And maybe because of how complex it was for me or just physical, whatever. Some people, it happens faster. Some people it takes longer. And for me, it always took a really long time or, relatively long. And, I was in one relationship for a while and, there was one time where, it went really, really long and I just couldn't finish. And my partner was very offended and hurt by that. And so then from that point forward, it was something I was super conscious of. Well, then the more I thought about it and the more I agonized over it, the worse it made it. And it started happening more. And then, she got really upset. And then it got to the point where we avoided sex for a while because it became all this tension and pressure surrounding it.
It's so
if everything
hard.
Doesn't go perfect, then both parties are feeling bad.
And I think the way to address that is you have to both talk about it and be honest about what you're feeling and really understand that it's both of you that are having, because the thing is, if the partner doesn't have a negative response to it, that loop doesn't form, right? So it's kind of like it's on the pattern of both people to heal it, right? To hold that space for your partner and be like, yeah, it's okay. And but also you're allowed to have your feelings and feel and address that you're hurt. But like I think the point is talk about it.
Yeah. Communication is one of the biggest things, right? Like communicating not only what you want or what you need or like, you know, what your partner wants and needs, but also those kind of things too. Like, you know, this is something that, you know, I'm very nervous about, or I feel very insecure about, or these are the things. Like I had one partner, sometimes it's these things that you would never think would bother someone. But I had one partner who I was very, very attracted to and thought she was totally gorgeous. And she had some small varicose vein on her leg. I couldn't care less about it. Like never, and I noticed it a couple times, but like literally.
Who doesn't have varicose veins?
Yeah. And I just like, to me, it was nothing to ever be embarrassed about, or like I didn't think anything of it. And one time I almost made a comment about it, like in a joking way, and then later I was so glad I didn't. But I just didn't think it was a big deal at all, right? Like it was nothing I ever even thought of. And then one day she comes to me and she's like, kind of like on the verge of crying and really nervous. And she's like, there's something I have to tell you. And I'm thinking, oh my God, did you cheat on me? Like what? Like, cause it seemed like something really, really heavy.
Yeah.
And then she told me that she made this private appointment and had it removed and then felt bad that she wasn't upfront about it. And I was just like, totally like, I first of all, it didn't bother me at all. Like I didn't think anything of it.
No kidding, yeah.
And yeah, you don't need to consult me to have that done. But the fact that it was such a huge thing that she was so self-conscious about, and I don't know what caused that. Like if someone else had made a comment about it in the past, or it was just something for whatever reason made her feel, you know, unattractive or something she was embarrassed of. But yeah, here me, like, didn't make, I mean, you could have had 100 of them. I wouldn't have cared at all. Like it made no difference to me whatsoever. Like I said, I thought she was drop dead gorgeous.
Right.
And, but it was something that she felt like for whatever reason, she was, you know, very, you know, felt very bad about it. And, so yeah, like, and I was so glad afterwards, like, oh my gosh, I'm glad I never poked fun at it or something. Because, oh my God, it would have been crushing for her. And I had no idea. But yeah, like you have to communicate because we never know what's really going on inside our partner. And a lot of times it's probably very different than what we think. And the assumptions we're jumping to are probably majority of the time incorrect. And, but yeah, I think it's very important to create like that safety and that security. And like, and now, like I said, fortunately for me, now I'm at a point in my life where I just don't, I guess I'm secure enough in who I am. Like, I don't care. Like it'd be very difficult, for someone to do something that's going to make me feel bad about anything.
Right.
And, but yeah. And then like in that one example I gave previously, like the fact that I was able to help this girl feel a lot better about some desires that she felt were very, very, you know, negative. You know, that's that communication. If she hadn't felt safe to tell me those things, you know, I'm sure things would have continued to be, you know, really, really hard for her in that regard. So yeah, communication, you know, providing a safe space and then just being like open-minded enough to like not judge people and realize like we all have our things and there's nothing wrong with that. And if they don't match up, that's okay. They don't have to be, they're not going to all the time. Right.
For sure.
So yeah, so I know, I think those are all important things. Okay, yeah. So we touched on this a little bit, but I think I want to ask you more directly. Have you ever felt like shame or embarrassment around your sexuality, and was there something specific that happened, or maybe earlier in your life that you think caused that?
Yeah, for sure. Like I think initially just growing up liking women caused this like shame feedback loop. And like I kind of mentioned earlier, just that initial experience where I was attracted to a woman and she was like in this unavailable sort of power role, I think caused just me to be drawn to that situation over and over again. And I think I sort of mentioned earlier too, how when I first met that teacher, I was going through, like, my brother had just died. My parents had just got divorced. We'd just moved to a new place, right? My life at home wasn't feeling great.
So you had all this instability.
Yeah, right? And then I'm around this teacher, and she's bringing in these qualities that, like, my parents weren't able to give me at that time. They were grieving. They were doing whatever they were doing. And then when I had her again in grade 8 and started having those feelings for her, I think it almost filled a void for me. So I think I got into this sort of loop of almost using, I don't want to say using, but I guess, using these women as escapism from the hard things I was going through in life. And so that has stuck with me. And it's funny because I hadn't been feeling that for a few years. And then recently when I went through a really difficult time mentally, I think I may have touched a bit on this in some earlier episodes too, but just briefly, when I was traveling last, I had just sort of like a re-trigger of some really intense anxiety, panic things. And I had to come home, and I was sort of messed up for a few months. And my girlfriend had to go back to travel at work on a project she'd been working on over there. And for me, it was like, even though she had come home with me at first, the way I experienced it really felt like abandonment. And it was really weird. It instantly triggered all those, like the desire, like, and I for someone to fill that place. And like, there's, so since then I've been experiencing that again, which is really interesting.
It totally makes sense.
Yeah.
That all started at a time in your life when you did feel abandoned. You went through a really traumatic event. You felt like the people that would normally be there for you weren't there. And then so you kind of sought that out somewhere else. And then later on that got attached to like a sexual situation.
Totally.
And so, I can see where, if you're feeling similar feelings like of that, where you were in a very vulnerable spot and you needed something, and then you felt like you didn't get everything you needed, and then that kind of stirs up those same emotions again, right?
Right. And then so like I think that's something I feel a lot of shame around for sure, because like it's not really like, especially when you're in a monogamous relationship, it doesn't feel good for your partner to know that you have those desires coming up for other people, right? And I think I feel shame around it towards that person or those people, like because there's been multiple people, like, and it feels just embarrassing, to be honest with you. It feels...
Well, I think it's important to... I'm sorry not to interrupt you, but I think it's important to mention, too, that you've been honest about these feelings, which I think most people would not be.
Right.
But you shared them with your partner and were open about it. And so, which it's good, and it's a very thing about communication, but then also now she's aware of these things, and then obviously that's going to complicate things.
Right. And like, kudos to her for being willing to accept my honesty, right? Because as much as she's feeling her feelings around it, which are completely valid, like she's still with me and she still wants to be, and she wants to do the work to move through that. She understands the situation, but I think in part that's because she respects the honesty. Yeah. Right. Like I think
that builds trust.
Yeah.
Right?
Like she knows she can trust me to tell her anything, because I tell her the worst stuff. Like, at least I try to. So, but yeah, like I've definitely experienced a lot of shame around those feelings. And that's something that you were helping me kind of navigate the other day too, because I'm just like, it does feel very beyond my control. And I do intellectually realize like how this kind of pattern started, but it's funny. It's like you can really cognitively understand something, but you still feel tons of shame about it. And I think it's because at that time when I had those feelings with the teacher, and they were intense, by the way, like I was like crying myself to sleep at night over this.
That's so hard.
And I felt so much shame because I couldn't tell anybody. I knew that it would be unrequited. Like I knew she cared about me. Right. And, maybe more than some other students, we had a special connection, but like, I was also a kid, even if she was gay, like it would be like, I was like 13. I'm like, this
isn't
like,
happening.
It felt like such a like tragic thing to me, like, and I think it just created this like internalized shame around, first of all, being young. So like any kind of like that dynamic, right, where there's like an older person and a younger person, like I think it triggered me to want to earn their love there. And also when there's like some power dynamic, like there's situations like that I've been in that trigger it as well. So it's an interesting thing to navigate. But yeah,
thanks for sharing that. That's something obviously like, and that's kind of the whole point of us talking about this, right? Like to be vulnerable and to be open, and I'm sure there's some people like listening to this that are going to hear some things I've said and you said and be like, what the heck is wrong with these people?
Really though, because what like I really do think everybody's got it. Like whether they want to admit it to themselves or not, like.
Everybody's got their things.
People have their things, right? And I guess maybe you're lucky if your thing is just straight missionary sex. I don't know. Good for you. But I don't think there's too many people that are like that don't have any.
Well, the thing is, relationships are complicated, period. And look at the amount of people that are unfaithful in their relationships, that are in monogamous relationships, committed relationships. And the popularity of websites that cater to married people is insane.
Yeah,
and
right. Well, it's easier,
and then how many
right?
people are using so many people I know use Tinder and use those dating sites really to cheat. Like that's what they are. But yeah, like you said, it's easier, right? Instead of doing the work and then people that like they still love their partner and they don't want to separate, but sexually they're you want to get that?
You know what that is?
What?
It's actually really cute. I'll actually show you. It's a gratitude alarm that me and my partner have on. I silenced my phone, but that apparently still likes to go off. But it's just like a reminder to take a minute. So it's actually funny. I was just talking about her, so thinking you, Jill.
Awesome.
But
That's actually that's actually a really cool thing to appreciate each other.
just like having a minute in the day to remind each other of each other. It's kind of nice. So we always like to take a picture or whatever, text each other during that. Obviously, I'm not gonna do that right now. But that's what that was.
That's really cool.
Anyway, but what we were saying is like it's easier to cheat, like and I think that's why a lot of people do it. It sucks. You know how much it sucks telling my partner this stuff, like to see her hurt over this, and I get it. Like it is super hurtful. Like I understand why there's hurt there. It sucks.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, it's hard to know you're hurting someone that you love. But I think a lot of people, what I also think it's like so me expressing a truth to my partner that's hard is giving her the chance to decide to be with me as I am. But when you don't give them that truth, like you're not even giving them a choice. So it's kind of, I think that's where it becomes selfish. But you also have to be willing to let them, like they're going to maybe make the choice not to be with you. So that's hard, right?
Well, then of course too, then like, if you cheat and you're having an affair, obviously that's led to the end of many, many relationships.
Yeah.
Some survive it, some don't. I've been in that situation myself on the receiving end where my partner was unfaithful. That's happened a couple times. And, that was, the first time that happened to me was devastating. And I instantly felt different towards that person for the rest of my life. I never felt the same.
Yeah.
And I just, for me, I'm just not capable of doing that to anyone. And, and I don't know, it's just, some of the way I'm wired, I just, that's not even really a temptation for me. But along this, I mean, this is kind of jumping here a little bit, but one thing I want to talk about too, that we've touched on a time, but really haven't talked about is polyamory.
Yeah.
And because that's something that you've been interested in and we had discussed a little bit when we were dating and it was something that I had never even really thought about before. I'm someone, I feel like I'm just naturally monogamous and I desire a committed relationship. And when when I'm in a healthy relationship and I feel very connected to my partner, I literally have no interest in anyone else.
Yeah.
That's just how I am.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
But so you want to talk a little bit about polyamory?
For sure. Yeah. And like, again, I think it can be a really beautiful thing in a lot of cases. And I think it can also be something that's not great. And it depends how you do it, right? If you show up with integrity, if both people are really making an effort to be honest and communicate, then it can be great, I think. But also like, so for me, I still like struggle to know where that desire comes from, right? Because when before I had this sort of rupture in my relationship that was really difficult for us, I hadn't had that desire since I'd met my partner at all. Like we're in a monogamous relationship. I had chosen that. Like when she met me, I had been like, I sort of leaned to living my life in a poly way. And for those of you that don't know, that just means having multiple loves, I think is the actual.
There can be a lot of different dynamics with that, right?
Yeah,
you can have a primary partner, you may or may not. You can have like a couple partners, you can have a whole bunch.
Yeah, I think
there's a lot of different definitions.
Yeah, kind of the point is you set the tone of how you want your life to look, right? And I think that can be really cool and really beautiful. And I think there's one part of me that sees that as like a very like ideal way to live, where you're just like being honest about everything that comes up, and you're not like denying yourself of things that you're interested in. But yeah, it can also be like if people aren't honest. Like I've been in dynamics before where people were not being honest. I'm like, why are you like?
There's no reason.
Yeah, like what's the reason to lie? Like, and so that was like, and that was a disaster. So there's been times like that too where it's not good. But for myself personally, I struggle to know whether it's a healthy thing or not, because I notice it coming up mostly when things are going not well with my current partner, right? And I think when you're truly in that space, and again, I still don't know for sure for me what's true, but I think I think it's like when it comes up, when everything's great and you're happy and solid and you still have that desire, it seems to me that would be more innately your truth, right? Because when it's coming up in response to negativity, I feel like that's
Maybe it's trying to make up for something.
You're trying to fill a void. And I know for a long time, part of it was like, so there's a couple different motivators that were maybe on the negative side for me. And one of those was I was, seeing people that were in relationships like that already. And I wanted to maintain the connection with them, but I didn't want to be lonely and like, perseverating over that person. So I was like wanting to live that way as well. But really I kind of wanted to be with that person. So it was
kind of a compromise to be able
maybe a compromise.
Yeah.
So I think like, and I think part of it also came from not feeling enough. And I'm being kind of convinced that the partners always would have wanted someone else. So it was almost just like a relief to know they do want someone else for sure. Like, I don't know if that makes sense.
And I could see where that would relieve some of the pressure.
Right. And then, another part of it came from, I think, because, from losing my brother when I was young, I was always sort of worried about loss. So it felt like a way, like an insurance policy on not having to grieve as hard.
If you lose one person, there's someone else.
Yeah. And I just struggled with, like, I remember one of my first breakups, I struggled. Like, it felt like she had died. Like, I grieved it that hard. And, like, I don't know why, but I remember being like, I can't do this. And
I don't think that's uncommon. I think a lot of people go through, especially their first big breakup, like your first love. And then especially like if you're younger and those emotions you haven't really learned how to deal with them.
Yeah, really this was a girl that I dated for about a year, and I had asked her for more emotionally, and I kind of expected her to show up with that because I was like, I can't do this anymore without that. And instead of meeting me where I wanted her to meet me, she was like, I can't meet you there. And I was just crushed, right? So, but yeah, so I think when it's in a healthy way, like I think there's the things that I think are positive about it are that, like you can, like it is really nice to be able to express everything that you want. Like I think that's really, really quite a beautiful thing. And I think it does really encourage honesty, I think overall, because I do tend to think like maybe not though, because people like you say you don't have other desires in your relationship. Like
I don't, but I think honestly I tend to be the minority, because if we look at like how many, if we could get the true statistics on how many people are faithful throughout all their relationships, I would say it's definitely a small amount.
Right. And well, and even if
why is that?
Like I want to, like for me, I want to deeply know my partner and I want to know what's coming up for them, even if it's hurt sometimes, like I think that's.
Yeah. Well, and I get the idea. You had mentioned this before, like the ability to love multiple people and have these multiple strong connections. And I can see where that could be a really beautiful thing.
Totally.
I've noticed too, like this, it seems to be something that has really grown in the queer and LGBTQIA plus community, that it's become a lot more common. And, I did briefly date one other person who was in a poly relationship. I was only dating her, but she had a primary partner, and it was really, she expressed that was really good for her because I was meeting certain needs she had and the other person was meeting certain needs. Yeah. And so it kind of filled all the things she needed. But for me, it just never felt the same as having like one partner that was just committed to you.
Yeah.
And,
that makes sense.
but yeah, I didn't have a problem with it at all. And I used to joke that I was her side chick, but but it just never felt the same as like being with somebody who was fully committed to the one thing. But like I said, I think I tend to be in the minority, and not that I've never been in a relationship and felt attracted to another person. I've just never allowed myself to explore that.
Yeah. And like, and maybe like, again, I don't know if there is a right answer. I think you have to decide that for yourself, obviously, but
I don't know. For me too, when I look at it, I'm like, one relationship is hard enough to juggle and manage.
Yeah.
And, I mean, relationships are so like they can be so awesome, but they also are a lot of work.
Totally there.
And I can't imagine trying to juggle multiple ones.
I know. But you know what? I think like, and I think that's probably true. But I also think it's interesting because people tend to put more of a value on their romantic partnerships. But if you think about it, like friendships, you also, if they're a deep friendship, you should in theory be having hard conversations too, right? But it's just a little bit, the boundaries are a little different, obviously. So it tends to bring up less. But yeah, people do juggle multiple friendships. Actually, one thing that I heard from a poly person before about that, like describing how it felt, that I thought was like a really nice thing was they just said like, do you love, if you have multiple kids, do you love one less because you have more? And it's like, no, right?
No.
So, and I don't think that's necessarily that, like, again, this isn't me saying that I think it's 100% right or wrong or whatever, but I think that that's just like one perspective to look at. Like, you can love people and like get your needs met, like you said, in different ways.
Yeah.
But
or maybe have that same, maybe some people are able to have that same kind of love with multiple people at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't think I am, but that doesn't make it right or wrong.
Yeah, no, exactly. And like for me, I don't know, right? And I like I said, I'm in a monogamous relationship and I'm really happy with my partner and I love and respect her and she's monogamous and I think that works well for us. But, you know, am I open to it in the future if that's something she wanted to try? Like maybe, I don't know, right? But I think it can be like we've said about everything, like good or bad, right? Yeah.
One thing that did remind me of was that the first person I ever met that was in a poly relationship actually was at a gender conference many years ago. And the funny thing is that I had assumed when I'd first heard about it that, oh, these were people that, you know, I thought it was like a sex related thing, right? Like they want to be able to have sex with lots of different people. That was my assumption that
could be one facet of it, but
and some people that may be a thing for them. Maybe they have a really high sex drive and want to have a bunch of sexual partners. But this person, the thing was, it was actually the opposite. They had no sex drive. They considered themselves asexual, but they were not aromantic, meaning that they experienced romantic feelings, but just basically had no sex drive and had no interest in sex. Well, they felt really bad for their partner. So and their partner's needs not being met. And for them, it felt like a huge burden to be sexual with this person when it was something they didn't want and didn't feel comfortable with. So the whole reason they were poly or in a poly relationship was allow their partner's needs to be met by other people. Because it was really hard for them, basically impossible for them to meet those needs. And that was something I'd never even considered. And I was like, wow, here you're in a, technically it was a poly relationship, but you have no interest in anyone else, but you feel this huge burden trying to please your partner. And so you're allowing your partner to have it. And for them, it worked. But that was just a perspective I had never even thought of or considered. So I think poly relationships can be many, many ways.
That sounds actually really beautiful and considerate to me. But it's funny you said that. I actually, when I was kind of exploring with dating multiple people, and there was one girl I was seeing, and we had spent, I think it was 2 or 3 nights together, and then the next night I was really looking forward to the night by myself, and she was like, got upset and wanted to hang out with me. And I was like, I really need this night. And I was like, why don't you go call up the other girl you're seeing? And she was like, okay. And then she went and saw her. So it was interesting. Like I've experienced that. Like
pinch hitter. Yeah.
I don't know that word. I don't know that reference. But
baseball reference.
Yeah. Well, I don't play baseball. But yeah. So I kind of have experienced something like that. But so what have you learned about intimacy and sexuality through your experiences and relationships, and how have you applied those lessons to improve your intimacy? That's like, I don't know if you've...
I think we've kind of summarized this a bit already, but for me, it was, moving through all of the realizing there's no reason to feel bad about the way you are.
Right.
And that's something obviously that, developed over many years and many experiences, but because I had so much shame and guilt about, not only being trans, but having a complicated sexuality, not being comfortable in my own body, especially in the bedroom. So I had all these things, and I'd been shamed for it many times. So I felt very, very vulnerable with all of that. And then eventually just came to the realization that I don't get to pick these things. I didn't choose these things. And it doesn't make me any less valuable as a person or mean there's anything wrong with me just because I'm not like everybody else. And so that was like how I grew and evolved and got to the place now where like literally I don't feel any shame or judgment around it. I'm very open about talking about it. And I know like I've had conversations with people that I didn't even know that well. And we got into these deep conversations and, and they asked me, especially with me being trans, people are sometimes curious about different things. And so we'll get onto these discussions about sexuality and relationships, and I'll share all these things. And I know for them, it's like, holy cow, I can't believe this person is comfortable telling me all of this. And, but it's because, I don't feel any shame or any guilt around it. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm not embarrassed to admit, like penises. And, I'm primarily attracted to women. I've only had romantic bonds with women, but there might be a dude out there that I could have a really great relationship with. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't, I don't judge myself for it. And I think like when they see that in me, it also feels like it creates a safe space for them to share similar things, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a huge thing.
So basically creating that safe space for people.
Yeah.
By being vulnerable yourself.
Yeah. I mean, that works in so many ways, right? Like if you show that vulnerability and you're not, you show them that it's okay, then like I said, me coming out, I can't tell you the countless conversations I've had where people opened up about things they'd never told anyone in their lives because they felt safe. They weren't going to be judged.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I think that's like a huge thing. It's a meaningful thing, meaningful space to provide people for sure. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, was there anything else we had to discuss on this topic or?
I think that's everything.
Okay, well, I hope everyone out there watching, found this to be valuable. Hopefully it helped you feel maybe a little bit better about some things that maybe you feel insecure about, or realize that there's no need to feel shame around, any of your desires. And hopefully this will lead you into having better communication in the future and, leading to live a more authentic and real life and relationship. And, as always, if you like what we're sharing, do all the like, subscribe, and all those things. Thanks for being here. We really appreciate it, and we hope to see you again in the future. All right, have a good day.
See you later.